Tonight on CTV News, does Christchurch need more city councillors? And the city's binge drinking culture is back in the spotlight.
Broadcasting across Canterbury, from the CTV studio, this is First at 5.
Good evening. The man charged with murdering toddler Ihaka Stokes has been granted name suppression again. The man, who police say is known to the 15-month-old's family, has today been granted interim name suppression for a third time since his arrest earlier this month. The man is also charged with assaulting the child a day before he was taken to hospital with fatal injuries. He will appear in court again next week. Well, does the city actually need more city councillors, or are we just repeating history again? Council will debate that very issue this week, but a former mayor says the plans don't go far enough. Jared McCulloch with this.
There could be a change to the way the Christchurch public vote at the next election if a council shake-up goes ahead. A representation review is being presented in the chamber this week to evaluate restructuring. The report says the public are underrepresented in council, with a ratio of one city councillor to 26,000 people. The national average is one councillor to nearly 17,000 people, well under what the council is operating to at present. And the former mayor of Christchurch says there needs to be a change.
Well, I think that the council's too small. The important thing is that the city's changed enormously. And to a certain extent, I think the representation in the east of the city needs to be much stronger than in the west, because that's where the challenges are going to be for the next 10 to 20 years.
He says since the earthquakes, the council structure needs a review. Back when Moore was mayor, a remodelling took place, reducing the number of councillors in half, from 24 to the current 12. It was tough at the time, but moves to shake it up again could see more councillors to help cater for all Christchurch residents, especially in the east.
You can't be even in actually putting the same number of people in Christchurch East as you are with somebody, say, at Hornby, because the demands are just enormous out there. Because Hornby's got a whole lot fewer problems than say, somebody who's representing Redcliffs or Sumner or Littleton or New Brighton, or so that as you go round the coast, there are enormous challenges, both in infrastructure and in people's lives.
There are two other options being proposed for the shake-up, with a report suggesting council take up one of three options. The first would see the council split into 14 different wards, with one elected councillor for each, plus the mayor, and a community board of 8 people. Under this proposal, council would put up an extra chair in the chamber, one up on the current 12 councillors. The second would see a large divide of wards, 16 in total, again having one member for each ward representing their area, but each community board would have one less member, sitting at 7. Or the other alternative is to stick to the status quo and continue at the next election with the current structure. But with more councillors comes a cost, and Moore says money shouldn't be a concern to ratepayers.
The last thing you talk about is what it's going to cost. What you have to do is you actually have to look at what is the best way for us as citizens to get what we want and hope for and desire through to the council table. What is the best way to achieve that?
The council will need to go through a public consultation process before any action can take place.
The council has got enormous challenges, and we maybe need to look at structures that reflect those challenges. I think we need much more sort of citizen participation than is currently. I know the council laws are committed to that, but we need to actually address that in different ways from how we have in the past.
The proposal will be brought up at the next council chamber meeting on Thursday. Jared McCulloch, CTV News.
Selwyn police are continuing to investigate a collision between a police vehicle and a cow. The crash occurred last night on Clintons Road in Darfield. The cow died at the scene, but despite substantial damage to the vehicle, the police officer was uninjured. Police say the lack of streetlight on the road may have prevented the officer from seeing the cow until it was far too late. No other motorists were involved. Police are yet to lay any charges. And a motorist is lucky to be alive after spending a freezing night in his crashed car after it rolled on black ice in the South Canterbury High Country.
Icy roads in the Canterbury High Country have claimed 3 crashes over the last few days. A motorist was lucky not to be seriously injured after spending a night in a rolled vehicle, which slipped on ice near Burke's Pass, near Lake Tekapo, on Sunday. His vehicle was spotted 20 metres off the road by another motorist on Monday morning, who then contacted police. Despite spending a night in icy conditions, the male motorist was treated at Fairley and his condition was not regarded as being serious. Police say the motorist is likely to have slipped on the black ice and was lucky to avoid serious injury. Burke's Pass was also the scene of 2 other crashes after weekend snowfall, which brought icy conditions to most of the country. A car with 3 occupants rolled on Sunday afternoon at the top of the pass and a truck got stuck. Police say both accidents were again due to black ice. Police are reminding motorists to drive with care and wear seatbelts.
Still to come here on CTV News, Dion Swiggs joins me for an update on the rebuild of this city. Welcome back to CTV News. The city's east is most likely to lose residents if coastal flooding risk increases. That's what one community board member says, and now the council is being urged to act before it's too late. Here's Chelsea Daniels.
Members of communities affected by the Coastal Hazards Assessment Report are urged to get involved, with public seminars being held all down the Christchurch coast. The report was presented to Council earlier this month and detailed the effect of sea level rises and climate change for the next century. It suggests that many areas of coastal Christchurch and Banks Peninsula will see coastal erosion over the next 50 to 100 years. And many concerns have been made from the public about the long-term risks of their assets, especially in the east.
Very, very difficult to see some areas going ahead and property prices booming when you're in an area that's doing almost the opposite.
Tim says there is a lot of difference in reaction to the news from the south to the east.
It's obviously not a big issue for them as it is for us. I think the feeling I got from the summer meeting was they feel quite protected, and even though they've got this new floodplain on their limbs, which came out on the 3rd of July, well, they're in the coastal erosion, coastal hazard, all those ones that have come out, they feel protected enough to not feel at risk.
He fears that the news would deter young families from moving into the area.
Would you want to buy a place, unless you're absolutely passionate about it, this is your first home, your family home, you're going to bring your kids up, would you think it's a good move to move into an area that's got a doubtful future? Well, you've been told that, hey, you might have inundation or coastal erosion in 50 years. I know what your solicitor will tell you.
Tim has already seen people cease to build on the coast because there are just too many risks involved.
I'm already seeing it. I'm not making this up. The fact is, I'm already seeing this, and I've got an example of my neighbour. $1.7 million rebuild in South Shore. He was going to rebuild, but there was no guarantee he would get insurance, so he wasn't going to risk it. So he took the payout. Other people I know who have bought perhaps an as-is, whereas they brought it up to standard, up to they've had it done professionally, cannot get insurance.
And he says that the community isn't being unreasonable. They just want it researched that little bit more.
Again, I'm not arguing the climate change one. I don't even want to go there. I want to see other reports. I believe we need more than one report. We've had a report done by a company who said this is how we see the future going for these coastal areas. And we're putting all our dollars into this jar, thinking, right, that's what they've said, this is what's going to happen. I would like to see more independent reviews done on that report.
Where the South Coast took the news on the chin, Tim says it's yet another hurdle for the East, who he says have been the most affected by the earthquakes.
But there's so many good people trying to make things happening, and I struggle with some of the things that happen, like, we're going to lose our golf course, we're going to lose our camping ground. We have to fight for everything down here, and it starts wearing people out. And quite often we win the battles, but, should life be such a hard battle?
Chelsea Daniels, CTV News.
And joining us now live in the studio for an update on issues affecting the Christchurch region, Dion Swiggs from Rebel Christchurch. What does this flooding hazard modelling actually mean, really? I mean, is it as bad as they're making out?
Well, the earthquakes have created what we call 100 years of relative sea level rise in the east, or over Christchurch. What that basically means is that in the time of the earthquake, the 6 seconds or whatever that the earthquake, the ground dropped, which would be 100 years of relative sea level rise. So these are questions that we actually really need to look at right now. They're really hard because you don't see it. You don't see sea level rise really.
So what are we seeing on the screen here? What is talk us through that?
This is the hazards of what is actually going to be looking at. So those areas are going to be inundated by water if that research is around a metre over the next 100 years. It's really hard to sort of say because there's conflicting research out there. But I remember just reading something this afternoon actually saying from another NASA scientist saying that there's a whole lot of other factors that we're not taking into consideration, and we might actually have further sea level rise of up to 10 feet within the next 50 years, which actually is well above what we're looking at here. We do need to look at this. We do need to be aware of it. In terms of insurance problems, I mean, you go around the east of Christchurch, you can see the raised level of houses because of the flood issues. And then you've got other houses who have been repaired by EQC, which are below those levels. We're going to have major issues in the east that we really do need to start looking at into the future from now.
OK, WorkSafe is investigating rebuild workers and potential hazards they've been exposed to. What's this about?
There's silica dust is one of the big things that they've just found out about. I mean, looking at it at the moment, it's there's so much dust in the city. If you just walk around and all the dust and from the demolition and everything like that, if you remember back in the days of the early red zoning, they actually had a lot of water that was actually dampening down a lot of these things. So they haven't been doing that. Some contractors haven't, but there are a lot that are. But they've just come across a couple of cases at the moment that they're investigating. So really the message from WorkSafe here is just be aware of it. They're looking into it, and so there'll be more information around this coming up.
OK, not long to go now before people can make submissions on Regenerate Christchurch.
Yes. So, I mean, Regenerate Christchurch is really one part of the transition plan. It's a central city, so it's really like drag, or sorry, the CCDU and drag, effectively. What we need to say is, do we want that? How do we want the city to look in the future?
We want the CCTV and
yeah, exactly. That could be quite an interesting look. But what do we want as a city? How do we want the future of our city to be led? How do we want the major issues such as the repairs to heritage or residential rebuilds? How do you want those things monitored? How do you want those things investigated around with what the government are doing in terms of the anchor projects? And Victoria Square here, we're going to talk a bit later about that. That's a good example of consultation, but we've got 9 days. Just say something.
Yeah, all right. Perhaps what people don't understand is the amount of infrastructure that goes on under the ground too, and it sounds pretty boring to mention this, but Orion plans to complete its underground electrical wiring pretty soon. I mean, that's all really positive stuff.
Yes, I mean, Orion needed to put the 66,000 kilovolt lines after the earthquake, otherwise East Christchurch would have had no power. There's been a number of issues around how long it's taken to get those underground cables. Most of the underground cables are now done, they're testing it out, but it's taken a little bit longer for them to get the underground cables back into full service because of the delays that have been on the Bridge Street repair and the Gayhurst Bridge repair. Mm-hmm. They're testing them out under load at the moment through winter, but they don't want to they don't want to just take out the overhead power lines at the moment because they don't know if it will fail. They've got to do a lot more testing. But at the end of the year, we'll have basically our power back to what it was before the earthquake, which is a really cool sign. I mean, if you remember, Orion was one of the champions after the earthquakes, and this is a really good signal to say, you know what, some of our infrastructure, some of the basic infrastructure is getting back to pre-quake levels.
The Bridge of Remembrance, finally some more action there.
Yeah, they just installed an 8.2 tonne big steel beam right at the top, and that's retrofitted into the actual Bridge of Remembrance. What this means is that it actually can take and withstand up to a 1 in 2,500 year earthquake event. So that means that that thing is going to be pretty well solid for the rest of its life, or for the rest of our lives and for generations to come. It's a really cool signal. They should have that repaired by the end of this year. It's taken a little bit longer than planned, but in the long run, it's going to be there safer for a long, long time.
Good. The controversial Margaret Mayhew Playground. Now, despite all the controversy surrounding this, it's Slow and steady wins the race.
It's happening. There was a release that the government just put out, I think, yesterday, that's saying that, work is finally actually starting on the site. Things are coming in. There's a lot of actual stuff going on. As you can see, that's what it will look like at the end. And we will be able to take our children or families down there to have a picnic by the end of the year. So that is a really cool thing. Christmas time at the Margaret Mayhew Playground. We should have a barbecue.
Looks pretty nice. Hopefully that'll be good. And just finally, we'll touch on Victoria Square. What is the latest there now? Because they obviously due to an overwhelming public response, Sarah backed down and said, oh, we got this one wrong. But there's still some tweaking to be had.
Yeah, they've released a draft plan on Victoria Square. That really is, in a nutshell, they've stepped back and gone, well, we'll keep the round bits and all those other things. What they're going to do now is they're actually just going to fix what's broken, which is a really good thing. They're going to widen the river a little bit so that there's punting can go up to there, which will actually work in conjunction with the repairs and the future use of the town hall. There'll be a bit more sort of information around there about what the Māori heritage is of the site. And really just prettying it up a little bit about what it is now. So this is a really good win for the community. The community said, we don't want Victoria Square changed into a big square with no grass, and that doesn't look very inviting. The people spoke. The government finally did listen. They've backed down on their original plans, and instead of spending $7 million, this might just cost, they haven't told us exactly. But this is, again, a really good win for the community.
All right, before we go, it is really important to have your say on Regenerate Christchurch. Just give the folks at home the details about if they want to make a submission about what's working in the city, what's not working in the city, what do they need to do? It's one more week to go, Dion. Yeah,
9 days. Go to the Sarah website, which is sarah.govt.nz, or you could even go to regeneratechristchurch.co.nz/transition, and there's a whole lot of information there. But just email them. Go onto your Facebook page and go to the Sarah Facebook page and just say something. All of those things count. As I said to somebody the other day, it's all well having a government that we think that doesn't listen, but it's even worse having a government that we think doesn't listen and that thinks that we don't care about our city. So really important to have our say around what's going to happen in our future.
Absolutely. So sarah.gov.nz website. Awesome stuff. Dion Swiggs from rebuildchristchurch.co.nz. Thank you for your time tonight. Well, still to come here on CTV, your region's weather. And welcome back to CTV News. So would education work better to curb New Zealand's binge drinking culture than closing bars early? Well, perhaps unsurprisingly, that's what one publican thinks. Here's Jared McCulloch.
The debate continues over the council's controversial local alcohol policy, putting the spotlight on off and on licensed premises around the city. The Christchurch City Council have been working on tightening alcohol rules, looking at where and when alcohol can be sold. However, one Christchurch bar owner in Riccarton, outside the CBD boundary, says if the draft local alcohol policy went through in its current form, suburban bars could suffer majorly.
If the policy went through and central city bars were able to open till 3 a.m. with a one-way door policy from 1, the effect would be that people would be leaving the suburbs as early as midnight, if not earlier, to get into town to attempt to ensure that they actually got inside the bar. So in fact, a closing time of 1 a.m. in the suburbs would in fact become a de facto closing time of, say, midnight, and to be perfectly frank, that would devastate probably most suburban bars.
The policy would see restrictions for off-licensed bars, cutting closing times to 9 p.m, and would see most bars shut up shop at 1 a.m, excluding those in the defined area of the central city, allowing them to stay open beyond that. Bart Filler says the council should be focusing on off-licensed premises, tackling the problem of those who binge drink on private property.
And our industry has thought that for a long time. It's the price is a significant factor. Now, it's not easy to bring in a minimum pricing regime, but the reality is that off-sales outlets sell significantly cheaper than anywhere else, and that is attractive to lower income people or students, young people or students, and so it's always going to be a factor.
However, he believes other methods could be used rather than a local policy to tackle the issue, coming down to education.
What it needs is a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of advertising put into letting kids know that it is no longer cool to get pissed.
He uses the example of the drink driving ads, saying the message has got across to young people and the same should be done around alcohol.
The young people today have picked up that message beautifully. They are far better at the drink drive message than some of my contemporaries, and they've got it. They pick on each other if they step out of line or attempt to drink and drive, and that's the sort of methodology that will change the culture. Not legislation. Legislation will not change it.
Filler has been a part of the hospitality industry for 35 years and says a lot has changed over the decades.
The difference between now and going back to the 80s, it's almost an unrecognisable industry. People are well behaved, they're not intoxicated, there are strict disciplines around those sorts of things. So the performance of, as I say, both patrons and operators on premise has changed dramatically. There's been several high-profile ones in the last year, and that sort of behaviour has not improved. So by driving more people from licensed premises to private premises is simply going to propagate that sort of behaviour.
But he says prices and bottle stores and supermarkets need to be looked into to help curb the problem, but he says that would be a difficult task.
But picking on licensed premises to try and solve any binge drinking culture in this society is not going to work.
The draft policy still has time to be looked at again before any final decision is made. Jared McCulloch, CTV News.
And now it's time for the region's weather.
Kia ora Canterbury. Well, a few southwesterly winds breezed through for most places today. However, most of us did get to about the 11 degree and higher mark. Let's take a look at today's highs. 13 degrees there for Timaru and Waimate. Moving to central Canterbury now. Christchurch, 10 degrees and a little bit overcast for you today. 11 for Akaroa, Leeston, Darfield and Methven, and 12 degrees for Ashburton there. Looking further north now, similar picture here. 12 degrees for Kaikoura, a little bit cooler for Cheviot, Amberley, Rangiora and Colvin on 11 degrees. 8 degrees there for Hammer Springs and 10 for Oxford. Over to the Alpine region now, just 6 degrees for Arthur's Pass. You are the coolest place to be today. Let's take a look at Wednesday's temperatures. Timaru, 12 degrees for you tomorrow, sunny skies and light winds breezing through, 0 degrees for your morning though. Looking to Ashburton now, similar picture here, but we are expecting high cloud tomorrow morning. That should be clearing though in the afternoon. Looking to Christchurch, 12 degrees is your high with a few southwesterly winds. They should be easing off in the evening and a few cloudy patches here and there. Looking to Kaikoura, a similar picture to Christchurch tomorrow, 11 degrees for you and those gusty southwesterlies easing off. Let's take a look at tomorrow's weather for the other centres now. Looking to Twizel, 10 degrees for you, sunny skies for most places in South Canterbury, 13 for Waimate there. Looking to central Canterbury, 12 degrees for Akaroa and a few southwesterly winds breezing through for Akaroa as well. 12 degrees also for Leeston and Methven there and 11 for Darfield, sunny skies for you. Looking further north, 9 degrees for Hammer Springs. We're also seeing southwesterly winds coming through for everyone apart from Amberley there on 12 and a few cloudy patches and sunshine for you. Over to the Alpine region, 9 degrees for Lake Tekapo tomorrow. Let's take a look at the upcoming days. It's looking good. Thursday we're seeing 14 degrees for Kaikoura, sunny skies and light winds for most places, 13 degrees for everyone else here and not too bad for those morning temperatures. Looking to Friday, it just keeps getting warmer, 15 degrees for Kaikoura, Christchurch and Ashburton, northeasterly winds for Timaru there. And as we flip over to these days for the other areas, we're seeing a very similar picture, sunny skies, a few cloudy patches here and there, but mostly clear skies and light winds coming through. As we flip over to Friday, we're seeing that similar picture, how we are expecting a little bit of high cloud in the morning, that clearing up during the day. So over the next coming days, the temperatures are really warming up, so if you do have the opportunity to get out and about, then I hope you enjoy yourself. For now though, that's your weather update for Tuesday.
And that's CTV News for Tuesday. Have a good night.
supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.